All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Generations Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Crashbar. Yeah, this is the second of our new Junkions here that they're doing as the sort of like modulator gimmick for the Legacy Evolution line. Now, the first one that we got, unlike usual Junkions, turned into a truck, whereas Crashbar actually does more traditionally turn into a kind of Mad Maxy motorcycle here. And yeah, it's a pretty all right mode as motorcycles go. It rolls okay. I will say that I'm not totally sure like how the wheel is supposed to be aligned, because you'd sort of like instinctively think it should be up like this, but then it doesn't reach the ground. So you kind of have to, bring it down a little bit like this and then readjust this. But then the whole sort of like front section doesn't really have any pretense of like a windshield at all, so it feels like it sits kind of like weird and low, but yeah, I think for the most part it works. I'm not totally sold on the foot back here being the end of the seat either. I sort of wish that could like bend down a little bit more. Like you can bend it up like that, and that's an option, I guess, but it's supposed to feel like it's kind of like a bent seat like this, but it sort of feels like that should compress a little bit more. But for the most part, I think it works fairly well. It doesn't have a kickstand or anything. That's because it's got this whole wide section down here, so you kind of don't really need one to make it sit on the ground just like that. In terms of comparisons, just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom's Sideswipe. Obviously, that doesn't doesn't typically scale with how a motorcycle scales with a car, but since the Junkions turn into big motorcycles, I guess that scales just fine. Here he is with Animated Prowl, who came out in the same wave as he did and shares a weird number of similarities with him. It's weird that they, because we've heard them talk before about how they try to tend to like diversify the what's in each wave. So it's a little strange that we get two motorcycles in one wave, but not a complaint, just an interesting observation there. Here he is with Scrap Hook, and then let's do a few other Junkions. Here he is with I don't remember that one's name. It's Scrap Heap, Junkyard, one of those, but from from Generations. And here he is with one of the Studio Series Junkions with, again, Scrapyard, Junkyard, Junk Heap, whatever you want to call them. So you can see, kind of smaller than the other motorcycles. I mean, obviously he's smaller than the Studio Series one since it's a Voyager, but it does mean that, like, if we bring on wreck-gar here, you can't really have wreck-gar reasonably ride him just because, like, it's just really, really small for him. So it's like he's on I don't know, like a child's bike or something like that. So, I don't think that works super well. And honestly, he doesn't even really work super well with the other Junkions, like with Scrap Hook, who came out notionally in order to interface with him, because his handlebars are so small that they don't even have like actual 5mm pegs on them. They're just kind of sculpted there, which as a motorcycle transformer in and of itself is fine, but it does mean that if we take Scrap Hook, we can't really put him on him in super well in robot mode. I'll transform him real quick to show that off. Like you can see, he's just kind of a bit too bulky to reasonably get on the bike and have it look good. It just, again, still makes it look like he's a bit too big. And, because Crashbar is kind of wide on the bottom side here, and, Junk, whatever his name is, Scrap Hook, they all have the same couple of words making up their name. Doesn't, he's got wide legs. It kind of makes it hard for you to actually reasonably get him on here and have it look any good. So, I don't think that really works, and I don't think it really seemed like that was much of a design intention, honestly. I think that they were really more feeding into the sort of like mix and match vehicle modes kind of thing, to have them combine vehicle modes rather than traditionally, ride each other like Junkions usually do, because I should have thought about this before I transformed him, so I'll have to transform him right back. But if you can actually take this apart and do some interesting things with Scrap Hook's vehicle mode, so I could transform him right back and show that off. Okay, so there's some stuff that we can do here to kind of combine these guys. First thing you can do is if we could just remove the whole front section of scrap hook here and split that down the middle. What you can actually do is, and maybe helps a little bit to take this bit off, but you can do it with either side. You can actually take this and attach it to the side here, just using this peg and this hole, and there's even this tab that connects it together with this piece. There's even on this one side there's a slot for it, so you can actually attach the front section of scrapbook here as kind of like a little sidecar, which I think is really cool. And like, it's a bit weird, but you could, if you wanted to, do that on both sides here to, I guess give him two sidecars. I don't know. I think that would, I don't think there are any real motorcycles that have that kind of thing going on, but just as a fun thing you could do, that's an option. Another option is we can take off the front part of Crashbar here. It just connects kind of what will be the knee here. So you can bring this peg up, and then you can actually attach this to the front of scrap hook here and have that going on either with or without the the other part of the truck there. Again, kind of just giving it this sort of like Mad Maxy cobbled together vehicle mode look, which I think is pretty neat. And you could, if you want, do the same thing with the backside there. You have to take these pieces off, which become weapons in robot mode. They just peg in a couple places here and here. But if you do that, that loosens this bit up, and then you can do kind of the same thing here, and attach that in the front like that, which is it's a weird look, but it's kind of neat. And then you can do whatever you want with these. I've tried like combining all of the parts here, and there's some interesting things that you can do. Like let's see, how did I have it? I think I had both of these parts in the front here, and then I took, maybe it was these bits, and attached them on the sides like this. Is that how I had it? I don't know. I spent a lot of time, doing this the first time. Oh, it was these bits. It had to be these bits because they've got pegs on both sides there. Let's see. Had it kind of an angle here, so then maybe you can take that and plug that on there. There's things that you can do to combine these further and really mess around with it, which is kind of the again, kind of the fun thing about the modulators in general, is that you can combine them in a bunch of different wacky ways and experiment around with it. I'm not going to bother trying to get all the pieces there together, but just as an example of some things that you could do, it's weird, but it's kind of a cool looking vehicle mode. And I think that that's a fun play pattern here. I definitely had a good time kind of messing around with that when I first got the figure. But yeah, I guess we'll just take all the parts off and put him back in his regular vehicle mode so we can get on to transformation here. Okay. And just like Scrap Hook, though he is a modulator, you do not have to parts form him at all, really, to transform him. I mean, there's a little bit of parts forming just in terms of like taking the weapons off of where they're stored in vehicle mode. But that's just kind of the typical amount of parts forming for Generations figures, if you count it as parts forming. But yeah, you do want to take these two side sections here. These will be two guns that he has, and they can be kind of tricky to get out sometimes because they're pegged in here and here, but just take both of those off and put them off to the side for now, and then take these rods here, bars, exhausts, whatever they're supposed to be, and they tab in right here and then also into the hands. So you just want to unpeg them and take them off like that. And then we can just transform him normally. You want to take the whole back section here. Honestly, pretty similar to him, just like a little bit easier. But a lot of the stuff kind of ends up in the same spot here. But you just want to unhinge the leg here and kind of bring it up into place just like that. And then we can bring it forward, take the back wheel here, and it'll kind of just sit up like this in the back of the leg and flatten out the foot there. And then for this front section, it tabs into the little engine block here, which will be the arms. And when you're going back into alt mode, you want to make sure that that tabs into to these like middle slots in the piece there, not the side slots, because it kind of seems like they should fit there, but it is better to have those in the middle. It sits a little bit better in vehicle mode. But yeah, similarly, also, unhinge the leg like that, rotate it forward, and then you want to rotate the entire front section up like that, and then take the handlebars and rotate them to the inside, which kind of like locks it out into that position. And then with the front wheel here, again, just similarly bring it up onto the back of his leg. And then rotate him 90 degrees at the torso to bring his chest plate forward. And then the arms, they kind of lock into the back here. You just want to untab them and then bring them forward on these armatures so they sit in place like that. Unfold the arms and rotate around the hands. And then the head just kind of sinks into the body for transformation. Again, similarly to that mold. So you just want to flip that up and then lock it in place. And there we have him in his sort of like default robot mode. Now there's a few different things you can do with these. What they want you to do with these is to plug them into his back like this, which is, you know, not a bad look. I guess my issue with that is then there really isn't a great place to store these guys. Like you could put them on his arms as weapons or just have him hold them as weapons, either way. But you could also put them on the shoulders, which sticks out a little bit too much for my liking, and then kind of runs into the arm articulation. He does have pegs on his legs, but they're kind of like asymmetrically placed. Like he's got two sets of them on this side, and this one's a little bit too far forward to line up with this one, and this one's too far back. So like if you plug stuff in here, you know, that's not how you would plug it in, but just to show the example, like this one sits a lot further back on the leg, which I don't particularly like. So usually how I store these is I actually take the exhaust pipes here off and then store these on the back more like that. Just to, you know, give them a place to go, and then take these and put these on the arms just like this. So they, you know, they kind of sit out of the way. They get in room with the articulation a little bit, in the way of the articulation a little bit, I should say, but it's a little bit better than like having them on the shoulders where they get in the way a little bit more. But you could also do that. I just don't like how they kind of, you know, stick way up like that. But, you know, again, he's got lots of ports and stuff all over the place, so there's some good options here. Another thing that you can do, which I think is pretty neat, is I guess the back wheel here. You can kind of bring it down, and then both of these pieces that hold it in place are on a hinge, so you can kind of just like open them up so you can actually take the whole wheel out. And you can it's got, again, weird that they came out in the same way. I've got a kind of similar mechanism to animated Prowl, where you kind of rotate these out like this to give him the more sort of like typical spiky wheel for a Junkion to have. It's not exactly like, you know, usually the spikes just stick straight out, but you know, it's a version of that, which you can put on his arm as a shield. It's that one, right? Yeah, there we go. And do that kind of thing. Then of course you have to find something else to do with this. But again, you know, you've got some options here. You can either leave it like that, or, you know, close it up if you know, prefer that look. I usually just leave it on the back of his leg, but you know, again, you got some options here, which is one part of the fun of these modulator guys. Let me just get that back in there. In terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so it can rotate around. It's got a pretty good range, honestly, like a pretty expressive range. It can look pretty far up. It can obviously rotate around, and it has a good amount of wiggle back and forth. The shoulders here are on swivels. Again, you know, like a lot of the modulators, he does have parts that just like, you know, separate, and the arms are part of that. So it's just the swivel at the shoulder because that's where it pegs into place, and then it can also hinge out to the side about that far. He's got a bicep swivel. I'll just leave that off for now. He's got a full elbow bend because of how it works for transformation, a wrist swivel, which is nice. He's got a waist swivel, nice and tight there. Then the hips can go forward and back and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel, again, just from where it plugs in at the knee there. He does kind of have the wheels getting in the way of the knee articulation. If you bring those down, he can get a little under 90 of bend at the knee unless you activate that second transformation joint, which kind of like, you know, puts a gap in his knee a little bit, but still looks reasonably good to a certain point. So, you know, the stuff kind of gets in the way. And again, like if you take the wheel off and have that somewhere else, then this one leg in particular, it does make it a little bit easier for, because, you know, now the leg is kind of going in between that section rather than the wheel having to get out of the way. But, you know, so there's some kibbly stuff that it kind of has to move around, but it's not too bad, honestly. And then the foot, or I should say this foot in particular, has about that much ankle tilt. The toe can kind of tilt up a lot and then down a little bit, but the heel is mostly in place. And then on this side, He's got a bit more ankle tilt, and then the whole foot can kind of hinge forward a bit, but not really so much back. And then I guess if you take these bits off, then you can also tilt the foot down, but that, that doesn't add a whole lot. So, pretty decent articulation if you know how to work with the joints there. Just put this in his hand for now, I guess. Now, if you want him to ride any other Junkions, we can bring back on Junkyard here, which, actually I think probably works out a little bit better than a lot of the other ones because, like, if you look at the overall mass of a person and the overall mass of a motorcycle, the motorcycle should have more more mass, I would think. So, he actually scales maybe a little bit better on there than some of the Voyager ones do, but it also means because it's a really wide bike, then he has to like spread his legs a lot. So, you can get him to do it, but it takes a bit of finagling to actually make him look good. All right, we'll leave these bits off because they keep popping off. Usually they're not too bad, but yeah, so the legs are super spread out to the side just because Junkyard's a wide bike, but otherwise, proportionally, I think that works relatively well. And we could also bring back on the Generations Junkion here and have him try that one out. And again, that also kind of works. You just have to really work with the joints here. He's maybe a little bit small for getting on the seat there properly, and mine broke off one of the handlebars, but that kind of works. So you've got some options there, but again, like you kind of run into the issue of like their legs just being a little bit too wide to look like they're comfortably sitting on the other Junkions, but what can you do? All right, let's see if we can get these to stay back on. In terms of the other comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Sideswipe. So you can see he's actually a fairly small Deluxe. He's a little bit smaller than Sideswipe here at the head. Like he's not like tiny or anything, but definitely feels a little bit smaller than a lot of other average size Deluxes. Here he is again with Animated Prowl, who again, just like a weird number of similarities with. They both turn to bikes. They both have the little, shuriken weapons that become part of the wheel. Just it's weird that these guys came out in the same wave, but again, not a complaint, just an interesting observation there. And here he is again with Scrap Hook in his robot mode, and then we'll bring on, I'm not going to transform the other two bike guys again, but here he is with wreck-gar from Studio Series, just so you can see what they look like together. So yeah, definitely fun to get more Junkions here and have a bit more variety of different types of figures rather than them just being the same mold. I still hope we get another Studio Series one though that is this mold, just to have it be like a trio rather than just two of them being the same mold. But also just more Junkions is always good. But yeah, no, not a whole lot else to say about this figure. He is fun. I think I still like him a little bit more than I did Scrap Hook, but they're kind of fun to mess around with together, especially in vehicle mode. I definitely think that like that's how they're using the modulator gimmick best here, is making like funky kind of cool looking vehicle modes, because like there's stuff you can do in robot mode as well. Like if you want, you can actually like swap their limbs and stuff like that, but I don't know that they're totally proportioned super well to make that work, because like Scrap Hook has much kind of longer arms than Crashbar does, and then if you do the legs, they don't really like get to the same spot. So like they're like he's got longer lower legs, and Scrap Hook here has longer upper legs, so proportionally it doesn't really work to swap those parts unless you're doing both legs, and then it just looks a little bit silly, like making him comically short and making a Scrap Hook comically tall. So there's some fun stuff you can do there, and then obviously you can do the same thing with giving him other limbs from any of the other modulators from previous series as well. But I think that the modulator gimmick with these guys is best in vehicle mode. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. I guess I didn't really show him off holding his actual weapons. I don't know that you can really use these for weapons, so maybe they are just kind of like purely parts forming parts, but that's really all there is to them. But yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. I have an Instagram account where I post toy-related photos there every so often. That is toys.n.art on Instagram. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Crashbar.